Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Childs from the Arc of Grays Harbor, and we're here tonight to learn about Washington State's different plans and ways to protect assets for people with disabilities. Here tonight to speak, we have Peter Tassoni from the Department of Commerce and Tamara Roberts from the Arc of Washington. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box below. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Christy. Appreciate it. An echo from my side?
I don't know.
Huh.
I don't hear it.
Oh, I thought I heard an echo. So I'm Peter Tassoni from Department of Commerce. I'm the plan administrator for both the ABLE plan, and then also I work on the DDETF, which is the Developmental Disabilities Endowment Trust Fund, which is a special needs trust program. I was going to move the slides, but I have to get to the right button to press. Here we go. And Tamara, I'm sorry I didn't write you on the slide, but Tamara is the trust manager for the DDETF or DD endowment, or the trust fund as we'll be referring to it. We want to thank the ARC. I mean, this is amazing. We tried to do this last year, but there's a little incident with the weather. If I recall right, there was some white stuff all over the ground at this time of year.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. This year, we're back to our normal weather. And so as we go through our presentation, it's going to be in 3 parts, where we'll do a brief overview. We'll get into the nuts and bolts of how both programs work. And then we'll kind of do a next step if you're sold on the idea of wanting to enroll in one of these programs. But our legal disclaimer is Tamara and I know a lot about these programs, but we can only kind of give you summarized information about them. We can't give you actual financial or legal advice. You're welcome to throw scenarios at us once we get to the questions and answer session towards the end, and we can maybe help with some of those, but we can't get really into a lot of specifics, potentially what people could ask about. But this is relatively new information that the cost of an adult in a household with a disability is quite significant. So to create, you need almost $18,000 more a year to kind of bring parity to a household, because having a disability has costs associated with it. And so these are programs that can help with that and try to bring a little bit equity and fairness with being able to save money to try to minimize this cost. But for most of the folks that are probably on the webinar, this is the problem that, as it's understood, is because you may have a beneficiary who may be a child or an adult child or adult, a sibling or something that's on some type of federal means tested benefits. They cannot have more than $2,000 in assets. They can't have resources above that limit, or they lose those benefits. And so we're essentially keeping people with disabilities in poverty in order to keep them on their benefits. And both ABLE and special needs trusts solve this problem. Both are a legal way for you, an individual, to save money and not jeopardize that $2,000 limit and not jeopardize any of those public benefits that they're on. And so what is ABLE? So ABLE's the new kid on the block. Legislation was passed by Congress in 2014. Here in Washington State, we opened our program in 2018, a year and a half ago or so. And it is a tax advantage way to save money without jeopardizing those benefits. And it is actually defined in the IRS code, the tax code in particular, in section 529A. 529 is college savings. 529A is ABLE, which is kind of college savings plus disability stuff. But the key is it's related to the tax code. Didi, do you want to do this one, Tamara, or do you want me to just keep rolling?
Sure, and the Developmental Disabilities Endowment Trust Fund is a supplemental special needs trust. It was created by the state legislature in 1999, and we opened for enrollment in 2002. Like Peter's talking about, it is a way, another savings tool so that individuals can save funds and not impact their benefits. Special needs trusts are found in Social Security law. We are not in the IRS law like the 529A savings accounts. Do you have anything to add, Peter?
Yep. So we got two different federal laws that we're juggling here. But the key is both programs protect the assets across a whole bunch of different federal benefit programs, from SSA, SSI, Medicaid, HUD, SNAP. Any money that's in either of these two accounts is going to be ignored, excluded. They're not going to not be counted. What neither program does is protect against income. And some of these benefit programs actually have what's called a dual determination process. And so based on how much money the person's making and based on how much assets they may have, determine their eligibility for a program. And so if the individual is working or they're getting a different type of revenue stream, an income stream, then that may affect the amount of the benefits that they're receiving. So we can protect against for the assets. So that means you can save a whole bunch of money. But if you're working and your income keeps growing, there's going to be a point where that's going to diminish your benefits. So these are really good groundbreaking programs. They don't solve everything in particular, and assets is really what they're centered on. So Tamara and I will tell you that either or can work for a beneficiary depending on their situation, but frequently both programs can be used by an individual because there are benefits, advantages, nuances to one to the other that you can use to your advantage in order to maximize how you're saving and spending from these accounts with the benefits that you're receiving already. And so it's really determined by the person's situation. And that's why it's hard for Tamara and I to really give specific advice, because these are all variables that the individual, their family, and whoever's helping with decision-making in that individual's life are going to have to kind of figure out for themselves. Not really kicking the ball down the court, kicking the can, but it's really a complex series of inputs for a person to decide what they want. Both these plans can help with the assets, keep people on benefits, allow them to save money, and ideally escape poverty and live a better life, higher quality of life, more things that they can do. But we're going to start into the nuts and bolts of the two programs in kind of a compare and contrast mode. And this is where Tamara and I will do a lot more exchanging and talking. So Washington State ABLE has eligibility criteria. And so for Washington State, you got to be a resident of the state. You don't have to stay here. You just have to be a resident at the time that you enroll. And your disability had to occur before age 26. So either you're born with something or something happened to you in childhood or very early adulthood that created a disability. And then the way you kind of prove that you meet that eligibility, that criteria rather of a disability, is that you're eligible for SSI or SSI due to the disability. You either can receive it, you've been receiving it, or you're currently receiving it in the SSI or SSDI, which that means Social Security's already gone through this determination process and has actually figured out that the individual actually has a disability. Or you can have a condition that's listed on the Social Security Administration, the SSA's list of compassionate allowances conditions. And the last time I checked, there's like 277 conditions on that list. And a lot of them are like cancers and things like that, but a lot of them are the stereotypical, genetic, developmental or intellectual disabilities, cognitive disabilities there. So, for the most part, with ABLE, it's something that you're almost born with. It's not something you're going to age into later in life. So just because I'm maybe in my 60s and I've got, aging things, that's not going to qualify me for an ABLE account because it had to occur before age 26. You can do a self-certification, and that's essentially what you get is a licensed physician, a doctor, a psychiatrist to sign off that the person, the beneficiary, as we typically call them, meets the Social Security's definition of disability. And Social Security defines disability as your ability to work. So it's a little bit different than perhaps military. I know we have a pretty strong military presence in Washington state, and most soldiers, sailors, airmen coming out of the service are going to have some percentage disability attached to their exit from active service. And that doesn't count. It's got to be Social Security's definition. That's why it's related to this list of compassionate allowance conditions. So those are the criteria for ABLE: resident at the time of enrollment before age 26, and you meet one of these criteria that defines your disability. And for the endowment,
there are also a few requirements in order to participate in the endowment trust fund, what I call it. The first one is that the prospective beneficiary needs to be living in the state of Washington at the time of enrollment. So they do need to be a resident. They need to be under the age of 65 at the time of enrollment. And they also must meet the state definition of a developmental disability as determined by somebody from the Developmental Disabilities Administration, the DDA. The prospective beneficiary doesn't have to be receiving any services. We do understand that there are long wait lists to get some services, but they do need to have been evaluated and deemed developmentally disabled. I think I heard Peter say in his, and it goes the same for ours, you do not have to stay in the state of Washington. You just need to be living in the state of Washington at the time of enrollment. It is still a viable special needs trust. And I think I'm only aware of two states in the United States that don't recognize our trust. So we've got individuals who live all over and they're still using them and functioning. That's my slide.
And so those are eligibility criteria for the two programs, but really the fun part about both these programs is, yes, we call them savings programs. They're also could be considered an investment vehicle, but it's really spending the money because these programs are designed to have a higher quality of life. And I am getting little signals that my internet connection is unstable, so my voice might be bouncing a little bit, but expenditures on the screen, on the slide itself, is really where the fun is. So you can take the money out of your programs, of these plans, of your account, and spend it to help the individual in these 10 buckets. And these 10 buckets are really, really large. They would probably cover just about anything that you can think of. Well, most things that you can think of would be covered in this throughout their lifetime. So whether it's a small child, whether it's a young adult, someone that's initially in the workforce, maybe someone that's left the workforce to all the way to retirement, they can be using and expending their proceeds, their assets from these accounts in these different categories. And if you have really good eyesight, you notice that 3 of these categories have little stars next to them. And this is kind of where that nuance between the two programs comes in. So basic living expenses has that first star in the upper left corner. And that's because in ABLE, you could use your ABLE funds to buy groceries, household supplies, basic living things. While in the special needs trust, because of SSI and just a more general policy, is we don't want to be spending your trust money on those groceries or household supplies in particular, because it will have a negative effect on that SSI. So if the person's receiving a cash benefit, you can't be using your trust to spend money on those things, because it will knock a third off of whatever your monthly cash payment is. Housing is the second one. Similar scenario where you can use your ABLE funds for housing. With the special needs trust for an individual that's on SSI, you can't, because that is the point of SSI, is to pay for your groceries, to pay for your rent. There's another quirk about ABLE, is that you need, if you're taking money out to pay for your housing, you need to take it out in the month that you're using it for housing. Otherwise, the local housing authority or HUD will count that as a resource. So if I take money out for housing on the 28th, but don't pay the landlord until the 3rd, that means that $500 for rent went over a month. And so the housing authority is going to say, well, you had $500 in resources from last month that you could have used. I need to count that, and you may have a change in your subsidy for your rent. So the key here is to take it out in the same month that you're going to use it. And that might mean negotiating with your landlord, like, can I pay you on the 5th so I can take my money out on the 2nd, so it all happens in the same month and there's no penalty or no change in my subsidy. The third one that we have here is down towards the bottom, and that's with the fees for funeral and burial. With ABLE, you have time to use your ABLE funds after the person has passed in order to pay for things like a funeral, a burial, a memorial, a wake, or something. With a special needs trust, we can only buy a prepaid plan. So you need to buy all those type of services before essentially the trust also ceases to exist. It passes also, in a sense. And so we can't continue to take money out of the trust at that point. So everything needs to be a little bit prepaid for the trust. But with ABLE, you have that 60, 90 days to kind of clear up all outstanding expenditures, which can include the cost for funerals and stuff. So 3 little nuances in the nuts and bolts sections of how you can expend your money from the 2 different programs. And usually, we really do want to encourage people to work. It seems to be, I know we're in COVID and not everybody's working, and it's a little bit different times. But both ABLE and DD endowment can really help with helping those accessory or auxiliary work costs related to keeping somebody employed. It's a good way to take that extra money, that income, and then put it into the accounts. And then once it's in the account, of course, it's then protected. And then this will help over the long term with people that are employed. And that's a key. I mean, folks with disabilities should have just as enriching life as all of us do, with work, with community activities, and financial security, with these programs help provide is part of that too. And then this is part of the kind of the getting the money out is part of the fun thing, and that's where it was a little bit different. So ABLE's designed more as an online program. All our interfaces are online, and so you can think of like online banking. So if you want to get money out, you can transfer money to either the prepaid card that we offer, and then use it either at retailers or online, or you could transfer the money back to your bank account that's attached, do electronic transfer to your bank account. And then you can write checks or go into your credit union or bank account or bank itself and take out money if you need to. You can request a check to be mailed to you. And you can do this all either online through your account, or you can call the customer service call center, and they can help you work through a withdrawal and to get it sent on your way. But the DD endowment, it's a little bit different.
It is, and I'm sure you guys will hear Peter and I talk about that. ABLE is a real online friendly. It kind of came about with modern technology, and the trust fund has been around for a long time and didn't have all those fancy things. So we are still very much paper-based. For us, all requests, we call them disbursements. So all requests for disbursements must be submitted in writing and on one of our forms. We ask that it accompany documentation to substantiate the request. We issue checks. We don't have a fancy card. Sounds really cool, but that is not our situation. So we can issue checks to vendors. We also reimburse folks for purchases they'll make on behalf of an individual. And for a few instances, we can supply funds for someone to go make a purchase with the promise that they'll return those receipts after the fact. We are required, I think Peter has a slide on there, to keep all the documents regarding all the expenditures from the trust. If at any time, 3 years down the road, you need a copy of the receipt for the shoes, we're still going to have that because that is our responsibility to keep those. And yeah, I think I got all three of your points. Just a little extra information on the disbursements. We issue checks once a week. So we do ask that you allow for about 2 weeks for a request to be processed. Just like the ABLE folks, you can call and talk to us and see if something's going to be approvable, how long it might take. We here at the ARC of Washington are your one point of contact and where we talk to and make those phone calls to. We're a customer service team.
Another nuance between the two programs is ABLE, we're always sending the money to the beneficiary, the account owner. So that's one check going to the person, and then they have to go spend it out, whether it's writing checks to vendors or for services, while the trust fund can write multiple checks per disbursement to pay those vendors.
Correct. And then Peter saying that also made me think that we'll never make a check payable directly to a beneficiary, as that could count as income and impact their benefit. I thought that's where you're going with that, but you had a different point.
Yep. And we'll get into some other nuances deeper into the slide deck, but this is what prepaid card's pretty cool. It's available in the ABLE, and this is actually a loadable debit card. And so you can transfer amounts, from $10 to $15,000 if you want to onto the debit card. And so just like any other debit card, you have an online transactional history if you go into your account. But what's interesting about this particular TrueLink Visa card is you can actually block vendors or actually get down to the actual items. So let's say your disability happens to be one of mental health, and maybe you're dealing with some addiction issues, and so you could block anybody gambling so that you can't use the card necessarily at a casino. Or if you go to a retailer, you can't use it for tobacco products. So you could use it for everything else that's on that the counter that the cashier is registering, using the register. But then that tobacco product has to be pulled aside and you have to figure out a different payment for that. So it's kind of a neat way to give control to the beneficiary and help them with their various challenges. If there's a guardian or some type of authorized legal representative that's assisting the beneficiary with their account, then we have triggers that the system, when you get to a low balance or a high balance, it'll send emails out so that people can kind of monitor how they're spending their money or when they need to recharge their account. And so kind of what Tamara mentioned is, ABLE was created more in the electronic, footprint, while the trust is more paperwork oriented. And to me, I use the metaphor is ABLE's the wild, wild west. Anything and everything goes because it's on the account owner. The actual beneficiary has to make good decisions on how they can use their money, whether that's permissible or not, because there are some things that you can't use that money for, that there are penalties to that. And while you have Tamara as a trust office who's making a lot of those decisions for the beneficiary. So it's I may joke about the plaid, suits, gray plaid suits in the banking, but they're there to do their job and do it well, because the beneficiary can't do that. That there is something about their disability that does not allow them to do well at managing their own financial affairs. What, ABLE, Wild Wild West, if they can do it, they can do it. If they get in trouble, they face the consequences. With the trust program, you got Tamara to make sure that they're not getting in trouble. And that additional level of services has different costs associated with it.
Thank you. So you'll see, I'm just first going to touch on, in the parentheses, you'll see the word matched. So I just want to talk really quickly about when the program was created. The state legislator gave the program a $5 million endowment, and that was to be used towards a contribution match and some other matching things at that time. Over the life of the program, the different matching options have changed, and currently the program is only matching on fees incurred by participating in the program. And these are the fees that you will see by participating in the program. There is a one-time $600 enrollment fee. It is a fee you pay to participate in the program. The program is currently matching it back 100%. There's a 1% management fee. That's 1% of the trust balance. It's charged after 1 year's participation. It is a minimum of $75, a maximum of $750, and the program is matching back the first $75 of that management fee. The trusts are legal entities and are by law required to file a federal tax return. There is a tax accountant that files the returns for the trust, not any individuals, but just for the trust. And he currently charges $75 for each of those. And the program is matching that back 100%. The last one is a $12.50 processing fee, and that's regarding disbursement. So the program allows for an account or account holder to do 12 disbursements per its calendar year. And we count disbursements by event. So anytime we have to pull the file to review it, that counts as one. You could have 10, 15, 3 check requests on there. As long as it's all at that same time, it's one. So the 12 was with the idea in mind that somebody can access their account at least once a month. So if you go over 12, you're in 13, 14, that's usually all that it really is, to be truthful. Range that those events could be charged $12.50 per time. Peter?
And then with ABLE, so there's an annual maintenance fee just to keep the account open. That's $35 every year, each and every basis. So that's $8.75 that comes out at the end of each quarter. We do charge a management fee that's based on the assets. And so we have different investment portfolios, and depending on which one the person is invested in, it has these different rates. And so that's a percentage with a decimal. So that's 0.30 to 0.38%, or 30 basis points to 38 basis points. And so that's still a really low number as a fee goes on the assets. This is what I was referring to as the Wild Wild West. So a non-QDE, so in the tax regulations that the IRS produced for the ABLE, it's called QDE, is a qualified disability expenditure. And that gets back to that slide with the 10 big buckets of different expenditures. But one of those is dogs are barking, so I think my wife just got home. And so if you chose to somehow get your money out and then you went gambling, that's not a qualified disability expenditure. And so you would end up paying a 10% penalty, and any earnings on that, whatever, the $100 that you took out to go gamble with, would be taxed. And that's something the IRS would come to collect on you. And we do charge an extra service fee to mail anything to you. So if you want your quarterly statements mailed to you, if you want your actual tax forms mailed to you, then that's going to incur a fee to just process and mail it through the U.S. Postal Service. And that's because we designed this to be an online system. So we really want to be giving you emails and getting your information through emails because it's just cheaper. And so that's the way that we can keep the cost down. Overall, both programs are incredibly low cost. Special Needs Trust within Washington State, I think this is the cheapest one I've seen out there. ABLE nationwide, we're one of the cheapest, or if not the cheapest out there in the nation. So these have been targeted to really be high service, low cost, to really look at low savers, or people that aren't going to save very much money, a couple $1,000s maybe. And so that we don't want our fees to consume all their principal. And so it's pretty amazing that what we're able to put together, and the service that the beneficiaries are going to receive with these really low fees. And this is just for me, it's just a chance for me to get a sip of water or something, but these are the signing ceremonies. The one on the left is Governor Locke signing what Tamara mentioned, the 1999, when the endowment became live, or rather became law. And then this is Governor Inslee in 2016 signing the ABLE legislation for the state. I do notice that Christy did put a question in the chat of asking what does what happens to the money in the trust when the person passes? Does the money actually disappear? And the answer is really no. Tamara will get into a little bit. It goes to the people that you said would receive it, just like in a will, or depending on the account, it may go back for Medicaid recovery. And so we'll touch on that later. But just because the person passes doesn't mean, oh, Peter's going on vacation to Hawaii or something. No, I don't get to touch the trust money. Tamara doesn't either. It's there, and we have in the legal documents specific instructions as to what happens to that money. And that's kind of the record keeping that the two programs do, and the difference. And this is kind of where getting back to the wild, wild west of ABLE, it's all on the account owner. That's why it's really nice to have that online system, because just like your bank, you have all your transactional histories. You got monthly statements, quarterly statements. You can go in there in real time and see how you've been using your prepaid card and what type of receipts you have from your vendors or services that you purchased. Even logging into your account, we can trace that. And so it's still up to the account holder, the owner, to make good decisions on how they're using their money. You cannot buy your neighbor Jimmy Bob down the street a brand new truck because they occasionally gives a ride to the beneficiary to go to the movie. You could certainly use ABLE to pay for an Uber. You could pay for a taxi. You can pay mom and dad reimbursement for their costs in driving their son to the movie theater. But because that's not a real benefit to the individual, that's a neighbor got a new truck, that just doesn't work. And that's going to incur that penalty and taxes too. So you got to make good decisions, but it's on you to make those good decisions on how you're using the ABLE program. I did mention that the ABLE does also create a tax form. We let the IRS know at the end of the year how much money was in the account and what type of distributions that were taken, because there might be tax consequences there. Also, we report to Social Security monthly, and it's just the balance, who has money and the balance there, because Social Security is going to reconcile against those folks that are receiving SSI. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but there is a limit of $100,000 in ABLE for SSI before your SSI payment may get negatively impacted, may go down as a result of having too many resources. All other federal means tested benefits, there is no ceiling. It's unlimited. So SSI is the only one with 100,000. You can have $500,000 in your account and not have to worry about your HUD subsidy being changed because of how much assets you have. That's record keeping. Basically, it's all on you. ABLE's not going to do a lot of it. But with DD endowment,
We do all of it. Like I said, we maintain the records for the disbursements. And quite frequently, we have folks come back around their guardianship review and didn't keep their copies and are looking for copies of those to submit to the courts. Happens all the time. We do send out quarterly statements. That's 4 statements a year. Those are mailed out to all of our points of contact in the database. The tax accountant prepares those tax returns, and those are mailed directly to those points of contact as well, so that they can be filed with the individual's tax return should they have to file a tax return. And we do not report to Social Security. So because we are not making any disbursements that are going to impact the individual's benefit, as that being a mission on the for the program, we don't have that requirement because we're not stepping on those toes to need to make those reportings to Social Security.
and there's, we talk about the endowment being paper-based, but they do have where you get your quarterly statements. There is an online
It's so new. I forget
viewing, so you can get. Yeah, it's it's instead of necessarily once you get access to the online viewing, then instead of having to ask Tamara or the others for documentation to take to court, then you can just go into it yourself. For those that have gone through the guardianship process, usually there is some type of court reporting you do annually, sometimes maybe up to every 3 years, and that is one of the ways that we get requested for information from the trust program.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
And contributions, this is one of the bigger differences.
It is.
Tamara?
We'll start with me. And as you see there are no limits on annual contributions. There are no limits on lifetime contributions. So you can contribute as much as you would like into a special needs trust. And you will not, and those will not be returned to you. Currently, we are only able to accept checks. We are not set up to allow for transfers into the checking account. It says here a bill pay. So we let folks know that you can work with your bank and set up a bill pay where your bank will physically mail a check to our office. So while it's not one of those situations with the ACH where they go in and grab money out of your account, you can still push money out electronically. Just behind the scenes, it's going to be a paper check. We're also reviewing those contributions as they're coming in. Do we talk about it in the slide specifically, the 2 types of trusts? And I think we mentioned it in or it was kind of real quick on the first slide or 2, but I don't know if we. So there are 2 types of trusts. Well, go ahead.
No, I don't think so. So this would be a good opportunity to talk about like that.
Let's do it. So there are 2 types of trusts offered with the DDETF, and the first one is a third-party trust. So I think of it as like mom or dad's money coming in to fund the trust for the benefit of the individual. The other type of trust is what they call a self-settled trust. So that is the type of trust that accepts funds that belong to the individual. So you have individuals who've received a lawsuit settlement and inheritance left directly to them. Some of our beneficiaries do work and do put a few of their wages in their trust. So that's the self-settled. So it's supposed to be their money. So what it's talking about there is we're looking at it to ensure that third-party money, mom or dad's money, is not going into the self-settled. But really the important piece is to ensure that the self-settled funds or the individual funds aren't going into that third party. Is this a good place to answer the question about the other difference in the trust?
Yes, we
Is
have
there
a
another slide? Is there another
one.
one? Okay, then I'll stop.
And then so on the ABLE side, you're limited to $15,000 a year in contributions, and that's related to the annual gift tax. So the IRS gift tax, where you can give money without either party having to pay taxes on it. But we do have a lifetime benefit limit of $500,000 a year. $500,000 limit is decades away, multiple decades it would take somebody to get there. So if you have a daddy warbox in your family that's wants to drop $1 million, go see Tamara. You just have some relatives that want to give a nice holiday gift of hundreds of dollars or maybe a couple $1,000s. Then the ABLE is could receive that money, but anything over $15,000 is going to get rejected. So here we are, an example. Here we are, we're almost in December, and let's say the ABLE accounts already received $12,000 in contributions, but then grandma wants to give Johnny $5,000 next month. That full $5,000 is going to get rejected because 12 and 5 is 17. It's over the $15,000 limit. So hopefully grandma and Johnny can talk and realize how much gap is there. And so maybe grandma can give $3,000 in December and then turn around in January, which is the start of the new tax year, and give the other $2,000. And so that way Johnny still gets the full $5,000. It just needs to be spaced out. Both programs, we can only take liquid assets. So we can only essentially take cash. So with ABLE, you could set up what Tamara was talking is ACH, or automatic clearinghouse, which is that digital or electronic payment that you can make, where you could go into a bank account and typically utilities can go in and take the money out to pay your bill. So we can do the paper check, we can do the bill pay from a financial institution. You can also go into your account, and if you have your bank account and your ABLE account link, you can make electronic transfer through the interface. We can also do e-gifting. So we can set up a gifting campaign on the ABLE. So essentially like a GoFundMe campaign. And maybe your friends, relatives, employers, or whatnot can help Johnny get to soccer camp this summer by contributing, making a payment through their credit card or a debit card and getting that gift contribution coming in during the year. And so that's kind of the big difference is DDETF is an unlimited bucket, a big bucket. It can absorb anything and everything. ABLE's a much smaller bucket. And this is really where the two programs can work really well together, in that maybe the parents or other folks are setting up some type of estate planning where they intend to give a big inheritance to a beneficiary that has, in particular, a developmental disability. And so you want to name the special needs trust, not the individual. You want to name the special needs trust to receive that money. And then, Tamara can move money over to the ABLE account for the individual to, put $100 or, well, maybe in my son's case, he's only 12, but he likes going to the movies. So maybe give him $30 on that debit card, and he can go to the movies with his buddies, and he can buy his popcorn and pay for his movie and stuff like that. So it's a way of, you have the security of not jeopardizing all that money that's in the special needs trust. But the key here is liquid assets. We can't, we cannot accept a home, a car, a boat, an airplane, jewelry. We can't actually, bond papers or security or, anything like that. We can't accept those things. It has to be liquidated first, then we can receive the cash and put it into these accounts. And this slide goes to what Tamara was talking about, is we do have a lot of folks that are working, and so they are able to push their earnings into these accounts to preserve, to build their assets and not jeopardize those benefits. And earnings come in a lot of different vehicles. We have very creative people with various disabilities that are actually doing work and receiving, monies for that work. And so both programs, just a reminder, both programs can work with them to betterment. Investment options. So these are slightly a little bit different. ABLE, we have 4 different options, from just a normal savings, FDIC insured, just like you have in your bank, probably a savings account, And then we have 3 different investment portfolios, and these are pre-mixed options. So we pre-mix 7 or 8 different mutual funds to give a return and risk ratio of conservative, moderate, and aggressive. And so depending on whether somebody's long-term investing, that they're not going to use their money for 20 years, and so they want to have returns to build up their assets, or whether they just want the money for 30 days because they already have what they figured that they're going to expend it on, and they need to do that soon, and they can't afford to lose any money, and so that's why you put it in the cash option. Well, with the D endowment, the governing board has already made that choice, and they chose one particular investment. And in our case here in the state of Washington, we have the state investment board that does that investment, and that is the entity that does. I mean, they're multi-billion-dollar assets under management. They do all the pensions, they do all the L&I, worker comp funds, they do a whole plethora of stuff. And so they're a great partner to be with, but the key is the individual can't choose an investment vehicle. That choice has already been made. But with ABLE, you do have some limited choices. We've already figured out the mix, but there are 4 different type of risk and return categories that they can choose from. And this is Medicaid recovers the bigger piece of why we talk about different types of trust funds. But with ABLE in particular, all money that comes into an ABLE account is considered first party money. So even if it's mom and dad making contributions into the ABLE account, even if it's an employer sending money over, if you run a gifting campaign and you get a whole bunch of money from various people in your realm, in your environment, whether that's friends, family, strangers, the $20 that you found on the sidewalk the other day. It's all, as soon as it hits the ABLE account, it's all considered first party money. And because it's first party money, it is eligible to pay back Medicaid. So if the individual received Medicaid services while the ABLE account was open, then the ABLE proceeds after the person has passed can be used to pay those Medicaid services. If the person had gotten services from other states, maybe they're moving through different families, or maybe their family moved out of state. Again, a military family comes to mind where they might be posted in somewhere else every 3 years. Then those other states can stand in line to collect on the Medicaid services that was spent on that individual while the ABLE account was open. Tamara?
And for the endowment trust fund, it depends on what type of trust you have established, on what happens to the funds in the trust when the individual passes away. In a third-party trust where it's mom or dad's money, and the individual passes away, we always like to just remind everyone the trust ceases to exist. So when the individual passes away, and if there are any funds remaining in the trust, they will be distributed according to how the documents are set up. There is a place for the primary donor or the person creating the trust for them to list if they would like it to go to other family members, charitable donations. They can list where they would like that to go to. In a trust to self-settled trust, where it's the individual's own money, the state is entitled to reclaim dollar for dollar for any services the individual received throughout their lifetime. We always caution folks that it's highly unlikely that anything will be left over after the state submits their bill. But the state, essentially, they get first dibs. And should anything be remaining after the state is paid back, then that is where those final remainder beneficiaries listed in the document might come into play. My time on the trust, I've been here since 2010. I've only seen 4 or 5 accounts have anything left over after the state has been reimbursed. And that has been purely for the fact that that individual had not been really receiving very many state benefits. Their Medicaid dollar amount was pretty low, and they had a relatively high trust dollar. But it's not the norm.
But just, I want to emphasize, so mom and dad's money will never go to pay back the state. well, it's only self-settled, the person's money themselves that was in a type 2 trust that would go to pay that. And with ABLE, in the event that like could be examples where there's not a lot of Medicaid or any Medicaid services delivered during that time frame, then just the money goes back to the estate. The government doesn't accept any. The money goes back to the estate, and then it gets dispersed as whoever that person's will determines. So pays off any outstanding ABLE expenditures, and then can go to who's ever named in the will to receive the final assets of the individual, which is just another reminder to folks that regardless of, because a person has a disability, they still need a will. You know, you still need estate planning, because there could be something at the end, and it's much, much cleaner to have a will than to go through the courts and probate system. And just again, a reminder, not only are these accounts good for the beneficiaries, they're good for employers. So this is another way to keep, you know, our folks are really loyal employees, and these accounts can help them keep employed by helping them pay for some of those auxiliary costs, and maybe evening out the rough waters of you know, if they have a job coach or not, or if there's maybe a new promotional opportunity with the employer, or maybe the job duties are changing a little bit. But these accounts can work really well for both the employee, the beneficiary, and the employer, and keep our folks interacting in society and being productive citizens that we all know that they can be. And so those are the nuts and bolts. It looks like, Christy, you put in another question. Yay, Christy.
I think she thought she got it.
Yeah, I think you answered it for me.
Yeah. Large inheritance, that's great. So for those, others attending the questions there in the chat, we kind of addressed it most recently. So moving forward, so hopefully we convinced you that these are great programs, and maybe you have an interest in learning more and actually enrolling. You can certainly reach out to us to get more details, but this is essentially a few slides, just what the next steps would be. And so for ABLE, again, with that online footprint, the easiest way is to go to our website and actually fill out the forms there. You know, mailing address, social security number, things like that, then you can be good to go anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. And then you just need to make that, at least that initial contribution of $25. You know, if you have $15,000, that's great, but you need to at least start with 25. And it takes about a week to get everything processed and get that money processed and get your account set up, and then you'd be good to go for additional contributions, or even to take an almost immediate withdrawal if you need to. And so here in ABLE online to sign up, you can also download the paperwork and you can fill it out by hand, and then you can mail it in. It just will take longer for us to get you set up, do the mailing time and then processing time on the other side once we receive your paperwork. But it's $25 to start. Each subsequent contribution has to be at least $10, and the minimum withdrawal you can take is $10. You know, if you want to take the full $15,000, but you know, it just gives us that little economy of scale of a big enough amount of money to make all the processing you know, cost effective and stuff. And here in Washington State, we have what, we've been open 18, 19, 20 months now, I think. 1,500 active accounts, nearly $10 million in assets. And basically you're looking at a map of Washington State, and it's a heat map. And so basically where the people live is where we have the most accounts. So of course, King County, the Puget Sound areas where most of the folks live in Washington State. But we're dispersed throughout the state. And we got some pretty happy folks that are able to save through their ABLE accounts. The DD endowment is a little different.
For us, paper. We need you to fill some stuff out on paper and send us your paper so that we can look at your paper. No, so we do have a joinder agreement that needs to be filled out. The joinder agreement and what we call the master trust document, the two documents combined make a complete copy of the trust. The joinder agreement is what's going to personalize it to the individual. Peter has a little graphic there to let you know that those forms are available on our website. If you don't have a printer and would like us to mail you some, we're happy to do so. It's not going to ask you anything that you don't know, but it is a fair number of pages and it does feel a little overwhelming sometimes. So I always just encourage folks to sit down and start filling out what you can. And then if you have any questions, please give us a call. We are available to go over it with you page by page if need be and let you know what we're looking for in each section. You will submit that joinder agreement along with at least a $600 check for the enrollment fee. If you would like to make an initial contribution at the time of enrollment, it will require a separate check. There are two accounts that the funds are deposited into, the fees and then the contributions. But if you don't make an initial contribution, it'll just sit there and it can essentially be a placeholder until it does receive that first contribution. And then that first contribution kind of starts the clock whenever the fees will start being charged. Earlier on, we talked about the funds that the state gave the program back whenever it was created for those matching funds. And so in order to receive those incentives or those match on fees, the program does ask that you meet a minimum balance requirement or through a vesting period. It is a time and financial requirement. The program asks that you make the equivalent of $25 a month contributions for that 3-year period. So in essence, at the end of 3 years, there needs to be at least $900 in private contributions into the account. And if it does, it vests, and those state matches that it's been receiving, those 3 years will become a part of the account and will be eligible to be spent. Some folks ask, if I contributed $900 on day one, could I vest day one? And the answer is no, you still have to wait the 3 years. That's why I always try and emphasize that as a time and financial requirement. I think that's all my bullets and anything I can think off the top of my head. I don't know the heat map that well. We haven't put this stuff. We haven't. It's the same for ABLE. Where people live is where we have the most trust, and King County is definitely the most. I think these are. Is this? Yeah, I think it's pretty current. We always tell people we have over 2,500, so I'm sure it's 27 by now, without a doubt.
Yep, and probably closer to $80 million with the way the market's been just going up and up and up and up. And there's Grays Harbor out there with 22. So when I put that together, there's quite a few people out there on the coast that have accounts with the DDE endowment. So yay, Arc of Grays Harbor.
Go Grays Harbor.
No, you guys have you've done historically great outreach for us. I mean, that's the advantage of the state ARC, that we've been able to work with the local county ARCs predominantly and to talk about the program and stuff, and it's great.
Yeah, I think this is good. Well, I guess last year doesn't really count, but it was 2 years in a row, there for a while. And so it's technically 3. We tried last year, just didn't make it. So yeah, you guys are doing great.
And then the ARC also put together this little 1-pager that kind of does a quick comparison between the two programs of ABLE and the DDETF Special Needs Trust. And again, the emphasis is these programs can be used well together, especially if you're looking at parents perhaps wanting to transfer wealth through the generations and use a special needs trust. But if the individual's actually got quite a bit of competency, or they're quite capable, then having an ABLE account, especially with that prepaid card, allows them to enjoy being out in community and making some financial choices about what they want to purchase, kind of a spontaneous way. And so they can work really well together. But if really the situation is it's going to be low funds, a one-time small amount of money that is going to be consumed quickly, then maybe the ABLE is the better solution because it's easier to get into, it's cheaper to be in for short term. And if you're going to liquidate the money after 6 or 9 months, that's a better way to do. But if you're in the long haul, or if you need, the person in particular needs assistance with their financial situation, then a trust is always a better solution. That is essentially what you're paying the trust to do, is to protect those assets. I've referred to a couple different slides about work. SSI program has some incentives to have people working while they're on SSI. And again, the trust or the ABLE account can work well with that. And that is something that individuals can work with either DVR or a different employment service provider to work through this. So there are tools and there are benefits to all these programs. And you don't necessarily need to take my and Tamara's word for it. There are other resources out there that do compare ABLE to special needs trust. This is from a national resource center on ABLE and financial vehicles to assist people with disabilities. But this is more of a generic or more general national view of special needs trusts. Ours have been customized a little bit to Washington State. We meet all the criteria of the Social Security Act, and we even get approval. The regional Seattle-based office, even they meet mustard, so to speak. But this is another resource for folks to get a webinar and learn about the two programs. I'm trying to press the button, and just there are special needs trusts available nationwide. There are also different ABLE accounts programs available nationwide, and this is just a quick snapshot of those that are available. So some are the green ones are for any state, and they will accept enrollees from any state. The gold ones, like Washington State, are only open to Washington State residents at the time. And the reason why I bring this to your attention is because there are incentives in other states where, even though you might be living in Washington, you might want to open your account in a different state. And the principal one might be, let's say grandma is going to be given $10,000 every year for the next 5 years, and grandma lives in a different state, where that state gives her a tax credit on her state income tax. So it's another way for her to make her state income tax advantages that we here in Washington State cannot offer because we have no income tax. And so that might be something for her to explore. Otherwise, Washington's got a great program. Both programs are really cost effective. They're cheap. And so maybe you don't need to look out of state, but there's always someone that's got a daddy Warbucks or rich grandparents in the family, and so that's a consideration. Tamara and I can both be reached in multiple ways, whether it's phone calls or emails or something. If you have additional questions, Tamara is part of the call center for the Special Needs Trust. Well, here in the ABLE side, we actually have a contracted call center that's on the East Coast, but they have a lot of ways that you want to talk in. So whether that's chat boxes on the website or TTY, emails, and of course a toll-free phone that you can call for those of us that still have dial-up phones at home. We do have a presence on social media. Both the DD endowment shares our mediums. So Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, both websites have various videos describing the programs that you guys can click on to learn more about. But if you do have questions, just give us a shout, because we're more than happy to work you through things and help people make good decisions. With that, that's about it, unless there's more questions for the participants. I know Chris just dropped off, so.
Oh, well, belated. Happy Thanksgiving, Chris.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, I don't think that I had any more questions. You guys did a great job of covering everything, and I feel like I popped in a little bit too early with my questions and they were answered like as you guys were talking. So, oh, I guess I did think of one. Um, is there an age limit for either of these? Like if a parent had a 2-year-old that they wanted to start one for, is that possible, or do they need to be older?
Yep. Nope. So my son enrolled in the trust program, I think 16 months. Yeah, there's been a couple other families that enrolled children even younger.
Yeah.
With the trust, you just have to be before age 65 before they cross that threshold of 65. For ABLE, it's the onset has to be before age 26, but you could be 60 years old and enroll. You just have to be able to show that the onset was before then. So the classic is Down syndrome. So you could have a person in their 60s with Down syndrome. They're eligible for both accounts, and they can enroll in either of the two programs. We do have people in their 70s and 80s. They've enrolled before that threshold and they've continued to age and do well. And the accounts have been available for them to use as they want to enhance their lives with various expenditures. But you do have to be a person, so you have to be born. So we at least have to wait until after birth.
After birth, okay, okay.
And there are other trust programs that will establish a trust for somebody over the age of 65. As we understand, there's just a penalty that somebody could pay for sheltering assets and trying to qualify for Medicare. So this program is just elected to not participate in that. So they just cut it off at 65. But if you had anybody who were in that situation, feel free to send them our way. We have a couple of names that we could give them.
Okay, okay. But they're able to keep their trust if they've enrolled in it prior to 65. Okay, okay. All right, that's good to know.
And ABLE has a really much broader definition of disability. The DD endowment is limited to people with cognitive disabilities or developmental disabilities, but ABLE, mental health, physical stuff, blindness, deafness. I mean, it's not just cognitive or DD, the old words. And so I know ARC is mostly looking at DD and people with disabilities, but it's a much broader thing. And so you may come across folks asking questions and especially mental health. ABLE is a good vehicle for them. There's not other options out there for them.
Right, right. Wonderful. I had no idea about that. That's so good to know. We do get calls a lot for all spectrums of disability. That people don't realize that we primarily are centered around IDD, and so that gives me a good some good wisdom to share with them, with those folks.
Same with tribal members. Out in the coast, you've got some nations and tribes out there.
We do.
Have enrollments from tribal members too, and so.
Okay.
It's U.S. citizens.
Okay. That's great.
Washington residents.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Let's see. I did think of one more thing during the slideshow. Now I'm trying to let it bubble up. Okay. So if we have a lot of families with really young kids. I think that's why the younger kid questions are kind of popping up. So if we have a parent who wants to enroll their child in an ABLE account and they want to have the option of using the debit card, the parent would be the one using the debit card. Is that correct?
Right, until the person turns 18 and becomes emancipated, essentially, or guardianship is determined, that the parents can run a minor's account.
I see. See.
And then potentially, there's some changes happening in the federal side on the rules, but after they turn 18. At least, in my case, my son, I still intend to run a lot of his stuff once he gets a little bit older.
Sure.
Then we enable, I can actually have 2 cards. My son could have 1 card with a limited amount, and then I, as the guardian of him and his financial, can have a 2nd card, and that could be the one that I'm usually using to make all the big expenditures. And then like the
Sure.
theater, he can have the $20 on the card and go to the state fair or go to the county fair, go get amusement park rides, or go to Starbucks with his buddy, and or
That's
ice.
awesome. And so you can, with that card, kind of put some restrictions on that. Is that right? To say, okay, this can only be used for certain things.
Yeah, you can. It's a little bit of work, but yes, you can. But generally, you want to. I usually caution people to do more of the things that you really want to prohibit
Prohibit, yeah. That makes sense.
versus it's really more. It'd be like I could get down to you could use it at coffee shops, but
If you
I
wanted to
can't
limit
like say
everything. Yeah.
right, you can't just go to Starbucks, but maybe I don't like some type of vendor. I could eliminate if the vendor's on the list. You can choose not to be able to use the card at the vendor,
Okay.
but you need to educate the individual on that, because if they want to go to Walmart every time and the card doesn't work, that could be pretty frustrating for them too. Because
Yeah,
you buy
absolutely.
your
And
whole
then with
spiel on
that, say
there.
they went to Walmart and they were purchasing a bunch of different things, but you could limit like a tobacco purchase. Is that
Right.
correct? Okay. Okay. That's interesting. That could be great for,
Yeah, and even if there's hiccups along the line, TrueLink is a financial institution that really caters to people with disabilities.
okay.
That they're mission driven, so they're going to call to try to figure out what's going on. There's somebody's using this card on a place where it generally doesn't get used. What's going on here? And so maybe, hopefully they call me, dad, and say, well, your son's at Walmart and he's trying to buy cigarettes. What's going on with that?
Okay.
And I'll be like, no, do not let that, I'm going to talk to my son here. But in other cases, it's just the dollar limit. He's got $30. So it's not like he can buy a round of drinks for everybody in Starbucks. It's not like he can buy everybody a ticket at the movie theater who's standing in line. Because
Right.
again, our kids and even our adults are a little bit vulnerable to peer pressure,
Absolutely.
fraud, or outright, crime and stuff. So these are some protections we're trying to put in place without infringing really on their, not only their rights, but their ability to be engaged in community and doing the things their peers do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's great. That's great. I could see that our ARC runs a community guide, community engagement program, and we have a lot of clients that we take out to different things like the movie theater and all kinds of different, and that could be a great budgeting tool if we could get their families on board with that. I love that. Very cool.
Mhm.
All right, so I see we have Aaron on the call. And I'm wondering if Aaron has any questions. If not, that's totally fine, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there.
I hope we didn't put her to sleep.
I know.
Okay.
You call me Staunchy Banker, so very exciting.
You're not wearing gray. Where's the plaid? Where's the tweed shirt, jacket? Like, I'm not wearing a tie.
No, nor socks. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, with that, I think we can wrap it up and let you guys get back to your evening. And we so appreciate you coming by and giving that presentation and answering our questions tonight. And I'm sure you'll be getting some phone calls soon because we definitely have families who are interested. And it's really helped me as someone who is in charge of information and assistance and referrals at the Arc of Grays Harbor to be able to know what I'm talking about and be able to give people more information. So thank you very much. And you guys have a lovely evening.
You too. Night, Peter.